Rain on Black Ties. The morning of June 11, 2026 unfolded with the deceptive serenity that fate often employed as its cruelest prelude. Thursday light seeped tentatively through the GMP and glass windows of the self-contained apartment, where ash-white curtains hung loosely like faded banners of surrender, stirring only when the wind remembered to breathe. The black-tiled floor, smooth, unyielding, and coldly reflective, mirrored the crimson-pink and ash walls in a silent dialogue of contrasts, vibrancy pressed against restraint, color fighting the monochrome weight of inherited burdens. This was the throne room of their fragile new tribe, where every tile seemed to record the footsteps of repetition, the slow accumulation of cycles that Morison-Kingsman had come to recognize as fate's signature. Her sediment had resumed school after the midterm break 2 days earlier. Judith moved through the morning rituals with the quiet determination of a woman who had learned to carry both maternal devotion and simmering resentment in the same hands. She bathed the boy, fed him, and dressed him in his school uniform, each gesture precise, almost ceremonial. The child, small sovereign of this modest kingdom, submitted with the unself-conscious royalty only the very young possess. Morison-Kingsman watched them from the edge of the larger bed, the weight of his own name pressing upon his chest like the unplastered walls of the bathroom behind the newly fixed door. He bathed with cold water that Judith had fetched, using the makeshift public bathroom outside the house, a humble structure of zinc and sagging tarpaulin, roofless and doorless, hidden partially by a line of plantains along the fence. Across the boundary, in the neighboring compound, goats and chickens competed in a raucous morning chorus, their cries rising like accusations against the stillness of human striving. As the cold water cascaded over his skin, sending sharp rivulets down his back, Morison-Kingsman's thoughts raced in tight, familiar circles. He was still trapped. The ventures that promised breakthrough dissolved like mist. The name Morison-Kingsman, raised by an old father's deceptions, continued to anchor him in patterns he desperately wished to escape. Fate, he reflected bitterly, had become his most intimate adversary, dribbling him with options that appeared as escape but led only deeper into the same compound, the same contradictions. The day progressed with surface normalcy until the rain arrived. It came suddenly in the afternoon, just minutes after her sediment was returned from school, as though the heavens themselves had waited for the boy's safe arrival before unleashing their fury. Heavy drops hammered the roof with rhythmic insistence, turning the compound paths into rushing streams and filling the air with the clean, earthy scent of wet soil. Morison-Kingsman stepped out under the downpour, tying a wrapper around his waist like a man preparing for ritual combat. He moved with purpose, positioning empty drums, plastic basins, and rubbers beneath the eaves of the roof to capture the rainwater. A small act of practical hope amid scarcity. The rain soaked him thoroughly, plastering the wrapper against his body. Yet he persisted, pushing a large blue plastic drum toward the area near Judith's younger brother's room. Water streamed down his face as he worked, blurring his vision and mingling with the sweat of exertion. In that moment, the rain became more than weather. It was fate's mocking benediction, a reminder that even gifts from above arrived with violence, disrupting plans, confining bodies, and exposing vulnerabilities. He returned to the veranda drenched, washed his hands in the running water, and stepped back inside the apartment, leaving wet footprints across the black-tiled floor. Dark imprints that would soon dry and vanish, much like his fleeting moments of progress. Judith opened her eyes and caught him as he sat on the edge of the bed. "Where did you go under the rain?" she asked, her voice carrying the sharp edge of accumulated suspicion. He offered only a silent nod, water still dripping from his frame onto the tiles. She noticed his soaked state and instructed him to take another wrapper from the basket. He did not move. Instead, he remained seated, picking up his phone and beginning to type. The screen's glow illuminating his face in the dim interior. The black tiles beneath him felt like a ledger, recording every unspoken word, every withheld truth. Then the phone rang, 4 insistent times. His third wife calling through her brother's wife's line. Morison-Kingsman felt the familiar tightening in his chest. In Judith's presence, he ignored the calls, rising instead to step outside once more into the relentless rain. He saw shelter beneath the veranda roof at the right-hand side, where the bathroom wall and house structure created a narrow corridor of concealment. There, shielded from sight and sound, he answered. The conversation flowed in low tones. She asked where he was. He told her he stood watching the rain, an honest answer that still felt like evasion. She spoke of immunizing their child the previous day, the final dose after birth. Small domestic details passed between them like fragile bridges. He shared fragments of his recent dreams. She offered counsel, then asked if he wished to speak with the child. He declined, citing dwindling airtime. Her laughter was warm, brief. The call ended abruptly as credit ran out. He returned inside, dripping. Judith's suspicion had hardened into quiet accusation. "What were you doing outside again?" "Fetching water," he replied, the half-truth tasting bitter on his tongue. Scarcely had he sat down to resume typing when the phone rang once more. Again he stepped out. Again Judith followed, positioning herself at the veranda to eavesdrop. This time, the third wife requested money for refilling gas, for restocking foodstuff for herself and the baby. Morison-Kingsman promised to send something when he could. He noticed Judith's presence burning behind him like a watchful flame. He ended the call quickly and walked past her into the house. The storm inside broke fully then. Judith followed him with rising rage, her footsteps sharp on the black-tiled floor. She sat beside him on the bed and demanded answers. Why the urgent early calls? Why always tracing back to the third wife? She recounted the dream from the night of May 31st that had ignited the June 1st quarrel, the spiritual confrontation with the other woman, and how she had attempted to bridge the growing chasm with a surprise kiss and declaration of love, only to be met with a cold, suspicious response. That rejection, she insisted, had opened the door to days of silence and separation. Morison-Kingsman's voice rose in defense, not of the other woman, but of a larger truth he had come to perceive. You create openings, he said, gesturing toward the raw, unplastered bathroom walls visible through the new door. And fate exploits them. Fate is the real enemy here, the strategist, the aggressor, the one who never tires. It knows every lacuna in our lives before we do and uses them to keep us running in circles, thwarting progress, diminishing returns, stifling every attempt at growth. The rain continued outside, pounding the roof as if applauding his declaration. Inside, the crimson pink and ash walls absorbed their raised voices, while the ash white curtains trembled at the windows. The black-tiled floor held their footprints like accusations. Judith countered fiercely, accusing the third wife of wielding evil mirrors and witchcraft to monitor and divide them. Morison-Kingsman defended her as merely a tool in fate's grand orchestration. In that charged moment, standing amidst the symbols of their unfinished life, the new door that led to raw walls, the cracked iron back door that allowed drafts of uncertainty, the black ties that recorded every step without mercy, Morison-Kingsman felt the full philosophical weight of his realization. Fate was not random misfortune, it was the invisible rigor of life's drama, forcing every soul into contradiction with its deepest desires. Stronger than the devil, it kept even Lucifer imprisoned in eternal rebellion, and now it was using the fractures in their relationship, the lingering shadows of his divided heart, to ensure that progress toward a true new tribe remained forever just beyond reach. The rain on the black ties continued its relentless drumming, a sound both cleansing and destructive, as the day's quiet morning gave way to the storm that fate had patiently prepared. Fate, the Hidden Architect, a theological exploration. In the quiet hours before dawn, when rain taps against zinc roofs and the black-tiled floor holds the chill of unresolved nights, a man named Morison-Kingsman confronts a reality few dare name openly. Fate is not chance, nor is it merely the will of God or the malice of the devil. It is something older, subtler, and more relentless, an autonomous power operating within the natural order, distorting its perfection while shielding itself from blame. This realization, born not in the halls of seminaries, but in the crucible of domestic strife, financial stagnation, and a child's recurring voice, demands a radical rethinking of how we understand divine sovereignty, human suffering, and the nature and path to freedom. The nature of faith. Faith is neither creature nor creator. It stands as a bridge between the natural and supernatural realms, fully independent, active, and intelligent. It does not create ex nihilo like God, nor does it rebel openly like Lucifer. Instead, it simulates, distorts, and rigs. It introduces friction where ascent should be smooth. It creates potholes on roads meant for pilgrimage. It pulls humanity toward the center of imperfection, while blurring the poles of perfection at the edges of existence. Where traditional theology often divides reality between God's providence and satanic opposition, Morison-Kingsman discerns a third actor. Faith is stronger than the devil because it keeps even Lucifer imprisoned in eternal contradiction, forever desiring return to glory, yet forever barred from it. Faith is not under God's direct authorship in the natural realm. It operates with delegated or usurped autonomy, turning what should be harmonious into chaotic drama. It is the grand simulator, the unseen director who ensures that every human story contains built-in thwarting mechanisms. This is why the same man can pray fervently for success at 29 and receive only extended futility. Why breakthroughs feel mythical and fleeting, like the massive ego in his dream, powerful when grasped, yet vicious and resistant to being held. Faith delights in near misses, in victories that wound the victor, in relationships that promise wholeness but deliver division. The problem of evil and the scapegoat of circumstance. Faith offers a third way through the classical theodicy dilemma. Blaming God breeds resentment and spiritual suicide. Blaming Satan externalizes all fault and absolves personal responsibility. Blaming oneself leads to paralysis and depression. But naming faith as the culprit liberates the spirit. It allows one to see suffering clearly without hating the Creator or descending into self-loathing. The boils on Hestedemet's body are not random affliction, nor direct divine testing. They are visible signatures of faith's interference. Pain introduced into the natural order to frustrate the flourishing of the innocent. The client who promises payment but disappears is not merely unreliable. He is moved like a piece on fate's board. The quarrels with Judith that erupt at the worst moments are not simply human weakness. They are orchestrated openings through which faith drains momentum. Faith hides its tracks. Masterfully, it disguises itself as circumstances, as personality flaws, as bad luck, or even as God's mysterious will. It makes the victim blame everyone except the true architect. This is its greatest victory, remaining invisible while directing the drama. Biblical echoes and the wisdom of the patriarchs. The biblical patriarchs understood this instinctively. Abraham, Isaac, Jacob, Joseph, Moses, and David did not merely trust passively. They fought faith with wisdom. They died with clarity, leaving blessings rather than curses, because they had seen through the illusions. They recognized patterns of opposition and countered them, not with rage, but with strategic alignment to the Creator. Wisdom in this framework is not mere prudence, it is spiritual warfare. It begins with declaring the Creator's work perfect, despite visible distortions. It attributes all imperfection to fate. It pursues the supernatural realm, which stands above fate's jurisdiction, and anchors ultimately in the Creator, who transcends even that realm. Jesus himself unmasked fate when he declared, "The ways of a man seem right in his own eyes." Behind every self-justification lies the hidden hand of distortion. The prodigal son's suffering, the rich young ruler's sorrow, the disciples' repeated failures, all carry the fingerprints of an intelligence that specializes in pulling humanity away from perfection. The new tribe and the daily fight. For those raising a new generation, this theology is both warning and empowerment. SLMS boys are not just medical, they are theological. They declare that even the youngest member of the new tribe inherits a world rigged against easy flourishing. The apartment, with its black-tied ledger, raw walls, and newly tiled bathroom, becomes a microcosm of the battle. Incremental beauty achieved through labor, yet always incomplete because fate delights in unfinished works. The father, who fights fate one day at a time, refuses easy scapegoats. He does not curse God, demonize his wife, or descend into self-hatred. Instead, he names the enemy clearly, documents its maneuvers, and persists in the values that transcend natural distortion: radical communication, unflinching truth, and consistent service. These are the weapons of wisdom. Faith wants pessimism, it wants isolation, it wants despair. The man who sees it clearly becomes dangerous to its kingdom. He begins to love the Creator's work as perfect. He attributes distortion where it belongs. He moves toward the supernatural and, ultimately, toward the source of all perfection. Conclusion: the long obedience of resistance. Fate is wicked toward humanity, yet it shields itself from blame with masterful disguises. It slows science, stifles innovation, turns love into cycles of pain, and makes progress feel like an eternal marriage on the road to Port Harcourt. But it is not invincible. Awareness is the first rebellion. Naming it is the second. Daily, deliberate resistance through wisdom, love, documentation, and service is the long obedience that wears down its power. The new tribe will not rise by denying reality. It will rise by seeing clearly, naming truthfully, and fighting fiercely. One rain-soaked morning, one boil-afflicted night, one tight reflection, one act of reluctant tenderness at a time. The father who fights fate does not always win the day, but he refuses to lose his soul to illusion. And in that refusal, something eternal begins to breathe. The new tribe, raising a new generation, awaits those willing to join the resistance.
You are still giving an excuse. Let me stop what I'm doing. You are not telling me that I'm being able to plan. If you know that my own life is not going to pause, like I've told you, my life is not going to pause because I've already decided that I'm going to move forward from where I am. So it's you now that don't want to realize that you have to add layer on what is on the ground already. Let me tell you, from the moment we did not use that distance to which I was discouraging you for. What was my reason for discouraging you from being constant? What was my reason? What was my reason for discouraging you from being constant? Is it not even better than, okay, as we were talking, you even opened the main brand, as you were saying? Is it not better than that you did not use the money for any tangible project? Any tangible project? You are telling me that in 11 months is in your stomach, or like you go to market is in your stomach. Yesterday was 1 week, and this yesterday was 1 week after you went to the last one. In the space of 1 week, you are going to market, you came in there. You're going to 1 week, only 1 week, you're going to your, and this is your second market after the first market. This is your second market after your first market. Now that you see that thing that I told you, that you, since you cannot look then can say no, I'm putting it in your mind as a conscious person that no belief say only this thing can sustain you. Remove that belief from your head and take serious steps about what other one can be bringing it to you. As I know that I carry 10,000 naira and buy and make 5,000 naira or 2,000 naira that day. Tomorrow I place again 2,000 naira that day. I know that this one is taking care of me. Not that I'm carrying 500,000 naira to buy one place, and the only thing is coming small, I will be eating it without knowing. Before I know it, it has finished. It's just like keeping it in the bank and collecting it. No difference. That means you don't give up. Wait now that I have decided to own up, take control of my own self. You see how the battle of life is, it does not move smoothly. Now that I have decided to take control of my own self, to come out of my old self and to repurpose my steps, you now don't want to move in that same spirit. Instead, you are putting your own spirit downward again. What is spirit? I'm not talking about spirituality. EBB to, small time, EBB to, where will the body come from? Who is asking you to stress it now? It's your brain I'm asking you to use now. So what can you do then? So you don't submit to fate to. You see Anna, me where they run from Anna. What you go do where they within your reach? Now be within your reach. Is that what is within your reach? Sure, I told you first of all that I want to separate my finance from yours. I want to separate my source of hoping from collaboration with you. Wait. Now, saying that means whatever is going to make me not to understand what I'm doing, I'm going to try to reason on it and then fix it so that I understand what I'm doing. Now, as it is currently, there is nothing on ground. I told you I do not want to be doing this movement about again. When I get call, I honor it just because that has been my nature to honor it. But that is not a plan. Neither is it a sustainable direction. Unless something happens immediately that says, okay, this thing that has happened now has empowered me from this one. You see, but it is not a plan and it is not something I can sustainably look up to. So I have to redirect my steps. And I know at least where I want to start from, how I want to start. Why keeping myself, my mind aligned without worry, the thing that has been making me worry, removing it from my mind so that I don't feel like something is doing me again. And I tell myself that this is what I am doing, this is why I am doing it. Not surrendering to failure again, that I want to fail, but taking conscious decision that this is what I want to do, this is what I don't want to do. At least let me know what I'm doing on my own side without discussing with you, without stressing myself that okay, I have to make everything look like this or look like that. I'm not directing you, but I'm telling you, don't mention this your feeling as an excuse, because I told you before you had this opportunity, you should plan for it, knowing that this is what was going to be. You already know that since I came, you have been the one keeping us going. And until breakthrough happens, if it happens within the 90 days, it's still on you. What is the plan for that one that came in? So that as this thing is the status quo is where I am currently, before what ought to be. You see, as this status has not changed, what will I use to augment? Because this is how it currently is, so that I don't go back to begging or to asking or to being stressed. Why I was guarding you against your quarrel attitude